we've never done anything to we've never done anything to train our dogs in any type of way. So yeah, we're kind of in that same boat. Hey, Sister Pig.
Hey, sorry, we're still trying to figure out.
The the link didn't work when I tried to click on the link from the email. It didn't work. I had to copy it and put it in my browser, and then it worked. So
Huh, that's interesting. That's good to know too. I'll ask and see if other people had that problem as well.
Oh, Tom said he copied and pasted too.
Okay. I'll look at that and see. I pretend to be tech savvy at times, but I have troubleshooting things a lot as well. So I'll see if I can Google search that along with the tadpoles and see if I can figure that out.
Yeah, I have tons of fish food. I'll bring you some fish food too.
Oh, sounds good.
You can keep them in the jar. I guess Sister Lewis is saying you need to change the water out, but
yeah, you'll just have to change the water out. I don't know how often, but when it starts to get cloudy or whatever, you just don't. Yeah, because yeah, it'll start to not be good. Also, they need it oxygenated.
Hmm.
So just by changing out the water helps bring in oxygen, fresh oxygen.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
but you could
it,
also get a bubbler, like a fish store.
it's okay. I'll bring you a straw and you can blow water. You can blow in the water.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what? When I was a little kid, I used to catch them and put them in a Cool Whip container, and I never changed their water or stuff, and they lived. That was
Yeah,
weird.
if you have a big enough container, you should probably be okay too. Or if you just add fresh water to every so often, or
Hmm.
yeah.
So I guess if we do buy one of those big kiddie pools, then we'll be all right.
I guess
Uh,
you still have little
So
kids,
the
so
kids jump in with them.
true, true. Yeah. Well, I mean, seems like we have to buy a new kiddie pool every year. Those things don't last more than one summer. So
and the plastic is brittle and then breaks.
yeah. Well, and the inflatable ones pop. So either way.
Hmm.
So well, I guess we can get started. I guess most of us are here that'll be here. Uh, I guess I don't know what the best way to start is. Usually we just it's pretty informal. But did anybody from the lesson this week from Mosiah? I guess either Mosiah 1 through 6. Um, I guess was there anything that stood out to anybody? Any thoughts, insights, questions from any of the reading or?
Um,
I don't know. One of the things I was thinking is because it said, the manual. I love the manual because asks you questions and have you go back and look. And I was think, I was reading over King Benjamin's speech, and then it said, they all fell to the earth. Is because they were just so overcome. And I went back and reread everything again. And like, would I have? Would it have been that dramatic for me? I don't know. Or was it just that they're just overcome with the spirit? I don't know if it was so much the words as if maybe it was the spirit that
Hmm.
that caused them to um to be that.
Hmm.
But I just trying to imagine that happening in more of a modern sense if we've had something similar, or if I would have acted in the same way.
That's a good point. I was reading something earlier where they were comparing it, and I think it's interesting that you say that because I was reading somebody that was saying like the fact that they all kind of cried with one voice, which I think is interesting that we don't necessarily react that way to things a lot, but they were talking about how similar that is to kind of the Hosanna shout that we did in conference and the dedication of temples and things like that, and how some of those ceremonies, although they are special and there's a specific way to do them because we do them so infrequently, they do carry a lot more meaning. So they were saying that maybe kind of part of what they were doing there was also, somewhat ceremonial, but because it was such an infrequent ceremony, it probably was a very special and kind of sacred time to him. Um, I don't know.
Oh, that's an interesting thing. That's an interesting way to think about it. Think of it in that way, because I was more thinking of like the Pentecostal kind of thing. I that's a good point. It could be more that.
I don't know. I'm not a Bible scholar or Book of Mormon scholar, but yeah, who knows?
I have a question. If if Nephi was a prophet, and these are the people that followed Nephi, descendants of the people that followed Nephi, it's several hundred years later. But how come they didn't already? I mean, weren't they already members of the church? I mean, didn't they already know about the gospel?
Hmm. Uh, Thoughts? Anybody?
Well,
I'm
I
not.
think
I'm not sure.
this group of people were sort of half and half Nephites and half the people of Mosiah, because right they had the Zarahemla people. So part of the people from Nephi moved north, or I think north or wherever they went. They found this people of Zarahemla, and they kind of combined. And so there was a lot of people there that are sort of converts, I guess. But also, I mean, go back and remember just before that, there was like about after Enos, his son, and then his grandson and great grandson. One of them was just like, I'm just passing this on to the next person. I'm a sinful person. Like, I mean, been through so many generations. I think there was all kinds of people in all kinds of places as far as their testimony, faith, and understanding.
Yeah, I definitely think that could be very true too.
I know when I have friends that are like I have friends that were raised in the church but they're inactive now. And when I talk to them, even though they were raised in the church and they went through the whole young women, the whole thing, they kind of forget how things are. They
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
just
yes,
sometimes
yes, true.
comments, and I'm like, really? So I think if you're not active or you mix with another group of people, it kind of gets diluted. And if you kind of adopt some of the other people's ways and you're not active, then it's easy to forget and kind of lose the gospel that way.
There was something that Garrett Latham said in one of our Sunday school classes like several months ago that I've just always remembered. He said that you can learn about the same thing or learn about the gospel your entire life, but until it touches your heart or until it's written on your heart, it still isn't going to mean very much in changing who you are. And I've always remembered the way he said that.
Yeah, I
And I
agree.
guess maybe it was like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think everybody, you can grow up in church and go through seminary and go through everything, be active in uh, say, or however much they participate. And you're right. You still have to have that conversion experience.
Yeah, and I think that really goes along a lot with what King Benjamin's saying here, because he's, so much of his speech, especially in the kind of 4 through 6 chapters, he's really talking a lot about that change of heart. And so obviously these are people, a lot of them that did grow up with the gospel, or at least part of it, and and so although they grew up knowing the commandments, he really does talk about that change of heart and really making it part of who we are, and not just something that we maybe do, I guess.
Hmm.
I mean, this was clearly a big experience for them. Um, like even the manual talks about how there's a mighty change versus like a gradual change.
Hmm.
And I sometimes ask myself, was I more of the gradual change of heart or was I a mighty change of heart? I'm not really sure which one I was, but I guess it can happen either way.
Hmm.
And I
I
guess,
think
like, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think it's a combination. You can have a mighty change of heart, but if you don't endure or you don't keep things up, like Becky was saying, you fall away or and and don't keep that testimony alive and keep studying, you can fall away. So I think sometimes you have to have that might. Sometimes you have a mighty change that gets you started down the path, but you need to keep it going. That gradual is sort of a kind of strengthens it or whatever you want to call it. But so I think you can have a little bit of both.
Yeah, I really agree, and I think I've noticed through my life too. It seems like that, um, you know, that I think it's a process that I have to go through a lot, of being converted and kind of being reconverted to the gospel, and so I think and King Benjamin talks in there about remembering a lot, and I think that's a lot of it too for me is that as I remember my covenants and remember the gospel, that it's continually changing me. I think sometimes it is a mighty change of heart at times, and I think other times it is a gradual change as I become reconverted to the gospel or to something else.
Something that Rylan brought up that I guess I've never realized or knew was that he explained to our kids that when the people fell down to their knees and prayed, and then they made a covenant in response to King Benjamin, and they said, we covenant that we will, continue in these things that you're telling us to do. Rylan's explained that to our boys as that was their baptism,
Hmm.
which I guess I hadn't really thought before that they didn't baptize um, in the way that we normally know. I don't know what y'all think about that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
Oops.
I
We
think
were talking about that as well because clearly when John the Baptist shows up, it's not like he's doing some strange new thing. It's like people clearly understand the concept, but at the same time, lots of people are flocking to him to get baptized. So it's both not entirely unheard of, but at the same time, it's something that maybe a lot of people have not done. So
yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Is I guess this was their form of baptism. They made a covenant in response to King Benjamin. I don't know. I guess I'd never thought about that.
well, in Alma was the first time that the Book of Mormon mentions being baptized and baptized by immersion and the way I see like Abinadi taught Alma and it sounded like Abinadi was maybe he had heavenly messengers or somebody gave him the authority or something or like yeah so I don't know that much about you don't ever hear of any baptisms in the Jewish tradition so I don't know but either way before you're baptized you need to have that covenant you're making that covenant and your baptism is just your outer sign of it you have to have the I think what Rylan was saying is true in that that's their I guess conversion.
mm,
Hmm.
and I think it is interesting, kind of what you're saying there about this was their baptism, and I think it is. Um, it's hard for me to kind of put it in context because I think as members of the church today we have a lot of traditions and when we talk about baptisms we picture going to the church and this ordinance that has all these people there and then there's going to be refreshments afterward, and so I think kind of the traditions that they had around baptism might have looked a lot different to them in that day, and so the way that they write about it might seem different. One of the things I was thinking about this week, I guess kind of on that note, was um, I was reading about, and Sister Lewis, this is kind of why the ceremony and things I think were on my mind earlier was because a lot of times I read King Benjamin's speech and I read it as a speech that it's this a lot of doctrine that he's giving to these people, but I was reading how much a lot of the things that happened during this time were related to traditions and ceremonies that they would have had, like the Day of Atonement and the Feast of the Tabernacle and these things that they would have done in the old world in Jerusalem, and that they're kind of doing here again. And so I thought it was really neat because it made it, just more real to me, of realizing these are people that are carrying their traditions and their ceremonies and everything that they knew about from there, and doing them here. And it kind of made it seem more real to me too now, because I feel like I'm kind of doing the same thing where we're not going to church now, and we're not doing some of the things that we used to do while we're kind of in the middle of this coronavirus crisis, and we're trying to kind of recreate some of the traditions that we had at church just within our own families. So it kind of made me, I guess, relate to King Benjamin and the people here in a way that maybe I hadn't before. But just another thought.
That makes me think. I mean, it is so quick. When Lehi and his family were like they were ordered to go back and get the plates because they needed the scriptures to guide them. I mean, they were breaking away from the main body of what the church was at that time, and you can see how quickly it is to, things can get changed and things can get lost.
Mm-hmm.
Even in this, we haven't been. It's been like whole. I know we haven't gotten to that point yet, but it could be very quickly if this. And even when people, we have evidences of that when the first missionaries went out and established branches, and then they come back a few years later and like, oh, what are you guys doing? And they would sort of add in their old traditions and things like that. It's easy for cultures and just different things to influence ordinances and
Mm-hmm.
traditions to influence practices and what's necessary versus essential and versus things that we just do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true.
I'm interested in y'all's thoughts on in chapter 4, where they talk about teaching your children not to quarrel.
I remember, yeah, that one sentence there, that was a good one.
Yeah, I'm not succeeding in what King Benjamin is telling you to do. So I was wondering if y'all had any thoughts on that. He's like, teach them to walk in the ways of truth and soberness. Teach them to love one another and to serve one another. And then that's it. Like,
Like, how is that done?
yeah, I'm like, all right, okay. So how exactly do you go about that sort of thing?
I think you probably do it every day. It says to teach them. It doesn't say that they're going to be perfect at it, and it doesn't mean that they're going to be 100% successful at it. It's a process.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm not teaching them correctly right now because like everyone's nerves are kind of a little more on edge than normal. And so I don't know. It seems like everyone is just a little bit quicker to get annoyed with each other, including me.
If we had started this call 15 minutes earlier, everybody would have been able to hear a huge quarrel that was going on in my house, and it would have been very live. Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, I just thought that was he just like laid that out there. I just thought that was interesting.
It's just very weird. My husband commented yesterday that he said we haven't spent this much time together, and I don't know how long.
Yeah, I'm
I know,
learning a lot.
I know it's really weird. I have to cook dinner every night now.
I'm really tired of it.
Yeah, the first week we bought a lot of stuff to make dinner, and then I think by the second week we had ordered a whole bunch of hot pockets because you know that's where we
Yeah,
are.
yeah. Yeah, there were just several things, especially in that like chapter 4 that I had underlined, and that was one of them.
All I can tell you, Becky, there was that I had four boys, and they all and five kids, four boys. The boys are just They always fight with each other. And so all you can do, in hindsight, I wish I had taught them, been better at teaching them to, yeah, yeah, I'll wrestle and argue with each other and get on each other's nerves. But at the end of the day, y'all are brothers, and you know, that when you grow up, your brother's going to be the one that's going to, you can count on, that's going to have your back, your family, and you don't treat each other badly. And we need to treat each other nicely. But my kids were 4 years apart, so they were all thoroughly convinced that the older one was convinced that the younger one was tormenting them on purpose, and sometimes they were, and sometimes they weren't. And then the younger one just, adored the older one because they were so much older and wanted to do just hang on their shirt tails all the time and be around them all the time, and that was really annoying. So, but I wish I'd worked a little harder at just also teaching them to do nice things for each other. So that's just my 2 cents worth. I wasn't as successful as I wanted to be. I think Cynthia's right. It's just something that you have to say, look, you have to teach them, and you have to teach them on an everyday basis, and just say, if you're mean to your little brother, then you have to do something nice for him, or figure out something that works for you, because when they were kids, and you're trying to teach them that, they're like, nah, I'm not gonna grow up and like my brother. He's too annoying. They don't believe you. But they remember those lessons as they grow, and then when they get to be older, they do have friendships and relationships. So it's just a frustrating. It's just difficult when you're a parent. It's just hard. It's just like, and boys are just out there. They're always they're out there.
I think we're.
You know what it made me think of?
Oh, you go ahead. Sorry.
Which one of us?
Well, I don't know. I
What
think
were
I
you
was
saying?
talking over somebody. I think it was Sister Lewis. Were you saying something?
Yeah, I was saying, well, maybe King Benjamin said that because there were some kids quarreling right there, down there, right at the family tent and whatnot.
Right in the front pew.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how else it was going to happen.
That's funny.
That's that does
I
paint
forgot
a really
about
good
that.
visual.
I was thinking that I was watching the video, and there's King Benjamin teaching all these people, and I'm like, all right, where's my family? Because my family's not any of those ones that are sitting there. All the children are like snuggled up against their parents, like playing with a doll. Like, that's not my family.
Yeah. Yeah, I was coming like this is the quietest sacrament meeting. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
everyone is so completely quiet. There would be like, yeah, little kids running around and playing, and but as far as the kids, I think to a certain extent they're going to quarrel, and to a certain extent, you can teach communication skills. You can teach look at things from the other point of view. You can teach conflict resolution skills. You know, what do you want? What does your brother want? How can you both get what you want? And none of these are um none of these are easy or not time consuming, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But there's skills that are very, very useful later in life.
Those are all good points.
Yeah.
I had one thing. It's kind of changing the subject though a little bit, Ethan.
Oh, that's totally fine.
It's kind of along the same lines. In verse 27 of chapter 4, he says, see that things are done in wisdom and order, for it is not requisite that a man should run faster than he has strength. And I've always thought that that is in reference to kind of like the spirit. But then I was looking at the manual, and it actually says, is your family running faster than you have strength? Evaluate your activities and make sure you are being diligent but also wise. And I guess my question for y'all was, in all of this time that we have to think about everything that we are not doing right now, is there anything that you have realized that you are running faster than you have strength? Because I certainly have.
Well, my calling's exploded, so I'm running faster than I probably should right now. So, but yeah, I've often thought about. I firmly believe that people, especially families with little kids and stuff, you get so busy doing stuff that you kind of do run faster than you should sometimes. Everybody's doing something different all at the same time, and everybody's just working double time. The parents are working double time to keep up with stuff. When you have your kids, we had our kids in sports, and we were, and our kids are 4 years apart. The sports programs are built for your kids to be 2 years apart. So we were always divided and going somewhere separate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is a good idea to give it some thought and say, okay, what were we doing that we should change? I thought I was thinking today, I've been watching the conference talks and trying to pick lessons for next year, and the talks are so amazing. And I was just thinking about kind of all of that stuff. It's like now that we're in this pandemic and we're all kind of forced to stop and stay home and interact with our families more and interact with our spouses more, and you kind of got to support each other and really, really, you just can't go out places and do things. you know um I was it's I bet it gives a lot of people food for thought about, where are my kids at? Do I like the way they are? Or, do I see I need to improve in some areas? Or, am I spending my time wisely, as an adult? If you don't have kids at home, am I really spending my time wisely? So it's given me food for thought for sure.
Yeah.
I think as I was hearing you talking and thinking about the verse, it reminded me of something that last year I'd gone through a really tough trial. I'd lost my job at one point, and then I had this new calling where I was in the young men, and and I just felt like there were all these things going on, and I just like could not juggle them all and like figure out what to do. And I'm the kind of person when I have a calling in the church, like I really want to give 110% and do everything that I can possibly do with it. And I went and I talked to Bishop Pig, and I was like, I don't know what to do because I mean I just don't have time to fulfill my calling with everything else that I have going on right now, and I just can't do it. And he really, I thought what he said was really good. Just of, when we think about our priorities, like it should be, our family, take care of our family, and then, our career, and then our calling is usually going to be somewhere in there, and depending on our situation, we can devote as much time as we can to it. And it really helped me feel a lot better about that because I think as long as we I feel like for me, as long as I'm taking care of my family, doing the very best I can with my family, you know, that's great. And then everything else I can do, the best I can, but I don't necessarily need to feel like I have to give it 110% if I don't have that to give, right now in my life. And so, yeah, I think what you were saying, Becky, is absolutely true.
Yeah, I think I've just, we've spent so much time at home not going to all the things that we used to go to that now I'm really wondering, like, do we really need to have all of those things?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know if we necessarily do. I don't know. I think I was running faster than I had strength, and it wasn't about the important things. It wasn't because of my family. It wasn't because of church. I don't have a career. I think it was like extra stuff that I was running faster than I needed to. So I was just thinking about that.
I think that conference talk, good, better, best.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you got a whole bunch of good things and you need to, um, drop a few of them and just concentrate on the highest priority
Mm-hmm.
ones.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're running kind of close on time. But did anybody have any last things, any things from chapter 4, 5, 6 that stood out to them, or any?
I think I said my main things.
One thing uh, that stood out to me a lot was I really like in kind of the verses 16 through 19 where he's talking about us being beggars, are we not all beggars? And I think that's really hit home a lot for me now. And we talked a lot last week about giving to other people, and like where do we find that balance of making sure that we have enough to provide for our family right now, and where do we start giving to other people? Are we being too selfish or too selfless or what? And it's really made me think a lot about the value that I put on the possessions that I have, whether they're what value there is to them. I just made me think a lot about that. I was reading a story this week about a lady from Brazil who, kind of the short version is, she didn't have anything. She was destitute, lived on a river bottom, and had like a sawhorse table. And then she had heard that somebody in her ward didn't have a table and needed one, and she went to her bishop and was like, I have this table, it'd be great for somebody that doesn't have one. And like that was her only possession, and she was happy to give it up. And I think, I really want to get to that point where I don't think about the things that I have as things that I have, but things that Heavenly Father's blessed me with that I can give to other people when they might be in need.
Well, thanks a lot, Ethan.
Oh,
Thank
thanks a ton, guys. I really appreciate y'all for joining and for being part of the conversation. And I think we'll probably plan on doing this next week about the same time, and until we go back to church or thereabouts.
So Ethan, do
Yeah.
you want me to put it in the Relief Society, um, my email that I sent out, that you need to copy and paste it?
Yeah, sure, that would be great. I had no idea that the link didn't work. So yeah, if you want to put that, you have to copy and paste it. And then I know a lot of people are logging in and watching the YouTube version later in the week. So if people want to do that and can't come at this time, that's more than fine too. So, well, thanks, guys. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Ethan.
All right, see you
Thank
later.
you.
Bye.